Hi guys, this is Ellery. So before we just jump into the tasker setup, I wanted to go through at a minimum the tasker script with you and also a couple network issues that you might run into setting up SpeechParser with Premise and then trying to access that offsite or something like that. So first thing is you want to make sure you've created a user. I forgot to put this in the last video, so you just go to web server and then you just right click on users and you put as many as you want, and you can name one of them an administrator if you want. And then so for now I just done remote user, and then I gave a password 123123. This is just for an example, obviously it's not my real password. And then so the tasker script right now doesn't use a secure connection because I rely on a VPN tunnel. So if you want, you can go and edit the script and go ahead and use a secure site. So just the here, I'll put this back like it was. So that's the default ports in Premise. So let it restart the service here. So when you change those, it may or may not restart the service for you. Just take note of this where it says current report. Let me log back in. Just take note of where it says current port. Make sure that matches what you want it to do. And so you can actually put any port in there you want. You could make something non-generic and voila, see it change. So that is the current port. Or you can go back to port 80. And take note of this IP address, obviously. So that's how you change the port. The best way, well, maybe not the best way, either way is fine. I just use the port forwarding feature in my router and forward everything that way. So it's up to you however you want to set yours up. So once you take note of all that, you'll plug all that up into this tasker URL fetch script. So there's the IP address. That's the global unique identifier for the SpeechParser home object. That's the username for the user account we just created within Premise Builder. There's the password and there's the port number. And that's just initializing the server response variable. So in case this stuff fails, it still has something in there. But this request down here shouldn't fail for you. But so what this script does, it takes this avcom variable, which is the auto voice variable that just contains everything that you said, and then it'll passes it to stext. And then send request gets called, and that's this function defined down here. So it's using a bunch of strings to form the URL down here. So one thing I want you guys to do before we go any further is to copy this out of the script, paste it someplace, and then that way you understand that the thing works if you can actually test it outside of your smartphone, right? And then the port we said was 80, so I'm going to go ahead and... So definitely go ahead and do that. Because you want to do a couple test commands, make sure everything works. Oh, make sure, I think I copied it. Paste it over here. And then in here, you want to remove everything, including in between those quotation marks, including the quotation marks, and then just put a sentence and put underscores instead of spaces. So that tells it to turn on the master bedroom lamp. So do something like that. And then you copy that. Oh, you know what? I don't know why I did that. Don't put the GUI ID where the IP address goes. Yeah, I must be tired. There, fix that. So then we go ahead and copy this and paste it into a browser. And you'll be able to read the response. So there you go. So this text here is just plain text. And so that's going to get read back by Tasker. So there's a couple things going on in the script. Let me go back to it. So after it forms this URL, it goes ahead and makes a request. It stores the response in server response. And depending on what server response is, it may want to send the request again in 1 second. And that you don't have to worry about that now. That's really for user customization features. If you were telling your alarm system to arm and your alarm system takes, like a couple hundred milliseconds to go ahead and arm. If you want to make sure it armed, you'd ask it again in a second, right? And so that's what this recursion is doing. Notice this actually recursing back up into itself. So I'm not going to get into explaining what recursion is. If you want to know that, just Google it. And then, so say it didn't ask it to send the request later. Say it got back a response from the premise saying it didn't understand the command. Well, if that's the case, you want it to go ahead and just leave Google Now open, maximize, and let Google Now say its response. Maybe its response is something like navigating to McDonald's, or maybe it's navigating to a good restaurant instead. Nothing wrong with McDonald's, though. And then, right, so that's what this section of code. Here you see this is just doing some tasks on my phone. I'll leave these for you guys to play with. So you do stuff like lock the home screen. And you have to go have Tasker set up to do that. Turn on and off Wi-Fi. That only works with certain Android versions. I mean, this stuff here has nothing to do with what we're talking about. I'm just showing it to you since it's part of the script. In fact, you could go remove it all if you wanted to, but I'll leave it there for you guys. Right, so you delete the whole function, and then you could delete these lines here if you didn't want to use it. But anyway, so if the thing doesn't say I did not understand, so if the premise server doesn't say I did not understand, it says some response. So here it said the response, master bedroom recessed light is already on. Master bedroom left nightstand light is already on. Then it'll actually go ahead and say the response back if the phone's not on vibrate. So you got to make sure your media volume is turned up, right? Make sure your phone, also your ringer is not on vibrate. I believe this is tied to the ringer. It never goes off during a meeting on me, so that must be what it's doing. And it'll also go ahead and flash the phrase on the screen. And it'll also minimize Google Now. That's what these two guys do. So there's an overview of what the Tasker task is doing and how to set up the port and the IP address and username and password. So definitely do what I'm showing you here. Get your script ready. Test things in Mozilla or whatever your favorite browser is on your PC. That way you can test everything. And for the next example, I'll be working on a Wi-Fi connection. That's why I'm using a local IP address and a local port. Again, you might choose to use port forwarding using like some weird port like 65,000 when your router settings, and then have that port be forwarded to port 80 on 192.168.1.147. So that's just some of the things you can do, or you could go create like one of those DDNS free accounts, and then you can actually have your own web address that'll be tied to your dynamic IP address from your internet service provider. So that's another option, and that's free to do. And you probably want to pick one though that your router works with, and that way your router can keep your IP address in sync with whatever DDNS provider you choose to go with. Or if you have a static IP address from your ISP, you could use that. But so that's covered all over the internet. So hopefully you guys will go Google that if you run into any problems. And obviously, if you're doing something like a DDNS provider, you would put that address here along with a colon and then whatever port. So say we want to change this guy back to Yep, so now the current port has been changed. So it actually restarts the web server subsystem. Yep, so it actually will restart that guy automatically, it looks like. So it'd be more like that. And then you see the response there. You can go ahead and you should play around with it like this. Because I mean, if you didn't do this, I'm not going to answer any crazy questions. You definitely need. This is actually complicated, but if you follow the steps I'm showing you in the videos, you won't have any problem. So for sure, don't skip this debugging step thinking, oh, well, you know, everything will just work the first time. So alright guys, I'm going to stop this video because it's getting a little long for what it's meant to do, and then I'll figure out how to do screen hosting off my cell phone. So we're going to take this same script that we've prepared in this video, and we're just going to paste it in a tasker folder, and we're going to tie it to a task and do a tasker profile. But there's quite a few nuances. And the other thing, you're going to want to have auto voice installed. Although I think even Commander will do the same thing. I think it works with Tasker now too. So I'm going to go ahead and stop this video and get my phone set up here.